Roll call.
Is Dave Kirsten here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Supervisors Berg, O'Day, and Wamble are excused. There is 19 present, 3 absent.
Okay, also, let the record show that Eric Lemire from Human Services, Alexa Didinsky from Judiciary and Law, and Erica Bando from Human Services also, and Sana Hawkins from Legislative are the youth in government present tonight. Welcome. Okay, we're going to move to supervisor comments. Attached that. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's been a long day. I'm going to move to citizen comments. If you want to speak, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to speak. Okay.
We good? I'm Amanda Becker at 1807 81st Street. Thank you all again for your service to our community. I appreciate you dedicating the time and efforts to make our community a better place. I'm here to provide comments tonight on the resolution to conduct a countywide advisory referendum on making the state of Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Normally, I'm all for referendums. Love the idea of letting the voters weigh in on policies, procedures, things that will affect our community. I think it's a great idea. However, not all referendums should come to fruition. What I don't love about this referendum specifically is that it is illegal, unenforceable, and ultimately puts the community at risk by threatening to block gun safety laws designed to save lives. It undermines the very oath sworn by law enforcement to protect and serve the public. Declaring our state a Second Amendment sanctuary state would make a statement that Wisconsin is refusing to enforce and dedicate tax-funded resources to the implementation of gun safety measures. This can be very problematic. Who decides which measures are unconstitutional? Is it, the folks in this room? Is it the governor? Is it police officers? Federal law supersedes state law, so how can this be enforced? What other laws are we going to decide that we don't agree with and bring to referendum? If we're going to go down that path, let's focus on health care and create a referendum to become an abortion sanctuary state or county so that we can ensure that women have bodily autonomy and can get the health care procedures that they need to save their lives. In conclusion, I'm not in favor of this referendum due to it being illegal, unenforceable, and risky to our community. I'm asking you to vote against it.
Thank you for your comments. Please state your name and address.
My name is Jody Meerhoff, and I live at 7220 First Avenue. I'm here also to speak against the referendum, asking residents if they would like to make Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary state. While, like Amanda, I usually support voters having a say through referendums, this proposal is asking the people of Kenosha County whether our state should willingly break both state and federal gun safety laws. As supervisors, your code of ethics says that you are bound to carry out impartially the laws of the state, nation, and county. That code also says the public interest is supposed to be your highest concern. This referendum defies the laws you swore to uphold and does nothing to promote the public interest. Since the board's own legal counsel has informed you that state and federal laws supersede any resolution or referendum you would propose to defy them, we all clearly understand this is yet another resolution that is pure political theater. Last meeting, a supervisor who identifies himself as a Republican plainly stated what all of us have been witnessing when he said he is on this board to do politics. That board member said the quiet part out loud about what we've seen going on with some supervisors on this board. His statement explains why members of this board have ignored the voices of the majority of their constituents who have contacted them, have ignored the majority of citizens who have appeared before this board to speak, and have ignored the facts and data and recommendations of experts. But the thing is, this board and its decisions should not be about politics. So I was very grateful that a different Republican supervisor who sits on this board responded to the claim that this is all about politics. That second Republican supervisor said he is here to represent what his constituents want. He said he leaves his own personal opinions at the door because he is here to represent the will of the people of Kenosha County, not to engage in politics. I'm sure many of the people listening in the gallery at that moment wanted to stand up and applaud that Republican's integrity. You all have the choice to engage in politics while you are here, or you have the choice to enact good government. And this county has some very real issues that this board could be addressing. Almost 10% of the residents in Kenosha County live with food insecurity. Almost 6,500 of them are children who go hungry because they do not have reliable access to affordable and nutritious food. What has this board done about it? Proposed 3 gun resolutions. Residents in Kenosha County spend well above the national median for housing, and they work 7 more hours per week over the national median in order to pay for that housing. What has this board done about it? Proposed 3 gun resolutions. In Kenosha County, there have been 16 fentanyl-related deaths so far this year, and law enforcement says we are on track to easily break last year's horrible record of 40 fentanyl-related deaths. Those are wasted lives that leave behind broken families and loved ones. One recent victim in our county was only 14 years old. What has this board done about it? Proposed 3 gun resolutions. I believe the people on this board have the ability to tackle those and other important issues. Whether you were elected by a landslide or by pulling a number out of a hat, you are here tonight with the responsibility to govern in a way that will make our county a better place. The people of Kenosha County do not want politics. They want access to food, affordable housing, and safe communities. They want jobs that pay a living wage. They want roads that are safe to drive on, and they want beautiful parks to visit. You are the people who have been entrusted by our community to act in the public interest. It is an awesome responsibility, and I believe that if you could find the will to put aside politics, you could do amazing things while you are on this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen wish to speak? Please state your name and address.
My name is Carol Rano. I live at 5621 First Street, postal address Racine, Wisconsin. I live in the village of Summers, Kenosha County. A sanctuary, it means peace. I grew up in Racine, raised my family in Kenosha. My boys graduated from Bradford and Lakeview Tech. Very good children. I'm very proud of them both. They both don't live here anymore. They moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, so I don't get to see them as much. When I raised my kids here, what I really liked about it versus living in Racine was it had a very family-oriented atmosphere. Festivals were oriented around the family and the children and having fun. In Racine, it was beer, Salmonorama, Kraut Festival, beer. So I was really liked raising my kids here. As I said, my sons live in Cedar Rapids now. One of my sons bought his first home there. The neighbor notices my car there with the Wisconsin plates. Oh, where do you live in Wisconsin? Oh, we live in Kenosha. She goes, oh, what's it like there? Because one of my daughters lives in Chicago, another one lives in Milwaukee, in one of the suburbs along the lake, and we're looking for somewhere to live in between there. I said, Kenosha, it's a great place. I really enjoyed raising my family here. Very family-oriented, lots of things to do. We got the lakefront, the bike paths, all that stuff. Wonderful place. But then it changed. There was an incident where a young man killed 2 people and permanently injured someone else with AR-15s. In a situation that should have been monitored and covered through police being our security forces, our city allowed private residents to have AR-15s in our downtown and didn't even think to check to ask this young kid that came up with one in his arms. That put a real damage to the town's atmosphere and bringing people back here. And it will be hard to get that back for years to come. Needless to say, when I went to go visit my son again, the neighbor doesn't live there anymore. Well, she didn't move here. This is an unnecessary political action, just aimed to inflame voters and make someone happy in the Republican Party. It's not what is good for our area here. It's not going to promote our city to be a place where people want to come and raise families or retire to. My husband has only a couple years left before he retires. We're going to make a decision. We've already been hit by Foxconn, because as you can tell, I live on First Street, so we have a big new road lit up like a parking lot 24 hours a day in front of our house, and we may not want to stay there anymore when he retires. Will we want to stay? Think about that when you make these decisions. It also affects having festivals here when you start allowing guns everywhere. Georgia just lost a 2-day festival from Live Nation because insurers won't insure them, and because the city's gun laws say in a public park that the public, because it's a temporary event, guess what? The laws don't apply there, so anybody can bring guns now into these big events. So insurance companies won't insure them, so guess what? After a run from 1997, it's done. These are the things that will affect us by going this route. And I guarantee you, me as a retiree, I'm not the only one thinking this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen wish to speak? Any other citizen wish to speak? Please state your name and address.
Sure. Lydia Spotswood, 6903 Second Avenue in Kenosha. I've emailed out to a number of members of the board some information about the Supreme Court ruling that recently came down, federal law that was enacted in a bipartisan way, even state law in Wisconsin. And all of that combined information says one simple thing, that this resolution is moot. In other words, even if people all over the state of Wisconsin said, yes, we want to have it, this has absolutely no force in law. So it begs a question for all of us in the room, what's the point of doing this sanctuary resolution in the state of Wisconsin? As some others have said tonight, for the public, it looks like pure political theater. It looks as if this is simply an effort to gin up an extremist turnout in the November election. It doesn't appear to be an authentic effort to address gun legislation in the state of Wisconsin. It's very transparent that that's not the case in this proposal. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I just want to share one last little thought here. Years ago, I was an operating room nurse. That's how I met my beloved husband, doing cases together. And I've shared with you that Paul and I have been gun owners, okay? So I'm not like saying nobody should have a gun. I will never forget the day that I spent. It was an 18-hour day in an operating room with a patient on the table, and our OR team was working to remove a bullet and eyeglasses from the brain of a 9-year-old boy. I'm going to ask you to think about that for a minute, because we can get so lost in the politics of this, we forget there's an incredible human toll in the politics of guns in our country. I shared with a couple of you earlier, to me this feels like we're reliving the experience of the American public with the tobacco lobby, when they just pretended, we all needed that stuff, and I was a smoker. So we all lived through that time, and it feels like we're rerunning this now, but in a far deadlier way, where the victims include the children of our country. So I'm just going to plead with you, reject what is clearly not an authentic resolution to impact gun legislation at the federal level, the state level, or even the local level. We have a large network of laws already in place, and it's clearly the will of the American people, including Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, that we have some regulation of guns. So calling this a sanctuary state just doesn't add up. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Iris Rivera, 4040 14th Avenue. This month, on the 23rd of August, Kenosha celebrates, or not celebrates, 2 years of the unrest that was here in the city. And I can tell you, our citizens haven't healed from that. And July 4th of this year, we had another shooting where 4 were shot, 1 died. Our citizens still haven't healed from that. Yet this body, the very next day, voted to repeal a weapons ban on county property. And you also voted to make Kenosha County a sanctuary state. I say again, our citizens have not healed yet from what happened nearly 2 years ago. And you're gonna allow people to come from all over and have sanctuary, but like someone else said, sanctuary is supposed to be meant to make us feel safe. And I can tell you from where I live on the cusp of where things are getting worse, and every single night I hear the gunfire. I don't feel safe. So instead of worrying about how to make those who want to defy federal law safer, find a way to make those of us who are law-abiding citizens feel safer. Because I am a veteran of the United States Air Force, I have my CCW, and I am still 100% against making the state or the county a Second Amendment sanctuary state.
Thank you. Any other citizen wish to speak? Any other citizen wish to speak? Any other citizen wish to speak? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. Okay, announcement of the chairman. I just have a couple things. Last week, Vice Chair Decker and myself attended the WCA Chairman Forum. It was a great event that covered the issues like public records law, Wisconsin open meetings law, ethics and conflicts of interest, and much more. Also, yesterday and today, we attended the rating presentation in Chicago to Standard & Poor's and Fitch. Everyone on the team gave some remarks, and we all felt that we accomplished our goal and be able to maintain our AAA status. We should hear from them within 10 days or so, which at that point, we'll let you know what the results were. Supervisor reports. I believe Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to report that tomorrow night, the Judiciary and Law Committee meets at 6:30. At 5:30, before the meeting, we will be meeting across the parking lot to the Public Safety Building in the lobby for a tour of the pretrial facility as well as the Emergency Operations Center as well. If you are interested in attending, meet us in the lobby at 5:30. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nidweski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For our July meeting, the Human Services Committee received a brief education on child support services employment programs and some valuable insight on the HUD lead paint program. We are grateful for the time and effort that Shalonda Black and Lindsay Sauer took to prepare and present this information outside of their normal workday schedule. Tonight, we had the opportunity to hold our meeting at the Boys and Girls Club in conjunction with activities celebrating National Night Out. We thank them for hosting us. The food service provider for Brookside and Willowbrook, Unidyne, gave a thorough presentation of their products and offerings. As we look forward to the budget planning process, the committee will continue to review existing human services contracts. That's all I have for today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Stuck.
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity to chair the last Public Works meeting while Supervisor Nordigan was on vacation. I must say you make it look a lot easier than it actually is, so but I was told it was okay. So just a couple things to go over from Public Works. I'll start with golf. They had on July 16th, they had the Brightondale Link second annual Brew Fest. Was extremely well. They had a sold-out field of 144 golfers. Very successful, and it's become an annual tradition. They are also said that employee hiring has gone very well, but they are still in need of a few able bodies for the golf shops and Brightondale Link's maintenance. They are continuing the recruitment efforts, targeting more employees to round out the team. Over on Public Works and Facilities, no major changes to the projects. Everything is moving according to schedule. I believe the Molinaro fire system device replacements, I believe that was just completed as well for that. And then over in highways, the highway report, Highway K is still under construction. Everything seems to be going with little or no delays. They are currently scheduled to be completed with the Highway K project by the end of October. Over at the intersection of U and Q, there has been a few delays caused by inclement weather and some utility relocation work. They are hopefully going to be completed with that intersection by late summer of this year. That has also affected starting the County Highway U and C intersection as they're waiting for the U and Q intersection to finish up first. So once that is done, they will begin to work on the construction for County Highway U and C improvements. The County Highway MB bridge deck replacement just began. They are targeting a substantial completion by end of September. We all approved the intergovernmental agreement at the last county board meeting between Lake County and Kenosha County for the roundabout over there at Easy and Russell Road. Both counties are targeting August ending to complete the execution of the intergovernmental agreement. Under Foxconn, for KR enhancement, the construction of the bridges over Union Pacific and Canadian Pacific are complete. The construction of the road base is also complete, and the concrete pavement is ongoing. The paving is ongoing. Project completion remains year-end of this year, while spring of next year is targeted for the completion of the punch list items. Over at Highway 50 between 118th Avenue and 43rd, the construction of the bridge is almost complete. Major reconstruction activities continue at the intersection of 31 and 50, and they are still targeting to complete major construction by year end of this year. And then the resurfacing project between County Highway O and State Highway 12, paving of the upper surface on the outside lanes are complete, while paving of the inner lanes are scheduled to start on the week of July 28th. This is on schedule for substantial completion by late fall of 22. We had asked, at our committee, we had asked for some numbers from, at the Pringle Center, we asked for attendance numbers, and they gave a report. Over at Bristol Woods, our total annual park visitors are 86,672. 21,880 are visitors came to Boundless Adventures, and our annual Pringle visitors are 3,013. This was data from 2021. And the Parks Department is continuing to search for seasonal employees, including lifeguards, fee collectors, short-term maintenance, and long-term maintenance, and a mechanic as well. Other than that, we have some over at Petrified Springs. The projects there are still going as scheduled. We have some upcoming events on August 9th and 23rd. There's Twilight Jazz at the Anderson Art Center. And on August 20th is the next picnic in the park over at Petrified Springs. I believe the event that they just had this weekend with the Kenosha Symphony over at Pets Park, I read was very well attended, but I'm sure we will get a report at our next meeting. But based on the news reports, there was a lot of people over at Pets Park last weekend, and from what I heard, it went very, very well. I believe that's all I have for report-wise. There are also 2 appointments on our agenda that passed the committee that we'll be hearing about later on this agenda, and that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor US.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Tuesday, July 26th, Joint Services met, and I'd like to take this opportunity to give the board a quick status update on staffing. The Communications Department answers all emergency and non-emergency calls in Kenosha County and dispatches an appropriate response in an accurate, efficient manner. The Communications Department is made up of 32 telecommunicators, 6 supervisors, 1 assistant manager, and 1 manager. There are currently 8 telecommuter vacancies. That's a 25% vacancy rate. On the 4th of July, the department had several employees, including multiple supervisors and the manager, working additional shifts on their time off to assist in covering extra radio channels and to handle the significant increase in calls. The staffing in the center increased to as many as 9 individuals working during peak hours. In June of this year, 4,744 911 calls were received by the Communications Department, with 95% of these calls answered in under 10 seconds and 98% in under 15 seconds. There were 17,510 non-emergency calls handled and 20 text messages received during this month as well. The Record Department operates on a 24-hour basis to maintain the database associated with incidents, investigation, arrest, traffic accidents, and citations generated by the Kenosha Police and the Sheriff's Department. The Records Department is composed of 17 clerks, 3 supervisors, and 1 manager. Currently, the Record Department has 1 records clerk and 1 manager vacancy. Last Wednesday, on the 27th of July, Director Josh Nielsen of Joint Services gave an overview presentation to the Executive Committee on the operations and the challenges of Joint Services. I look forward to continuing to update the board on staffing levels and sharing more information about the services Joint Services provides. And in conjunction with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request at the next county board meeting that we have a status update on the compensation study that the county has been working on. Joint Services is relying on that compensation study to see about wages, because that seems to be the #1 factor as to why we are having a difficult time having telecommunicators fully staffed. And I would like to know where we are with that, since it was in the budget for 2022. So if we could have an update on that as to where that status is, I would appreciate it, because our budget for Joint Services is going to be voted on in September. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Bashaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. recently, on July 20th, I attended my first Pringle board meeting, so I'm going to ask if you indulge me for a few minutes. Unfortunately, we only meet once a quarter, so a few minutes might be 3 times as long as you expect. Warren Leesman has assumed the reins over with Pringle and is doing a fantastic job of getting reorganized and pressing forward. The meeting consisted of the election of officers to serve a 1-year term and appointment of 3 additional new board members, and then reviewing business as it's been happening with Pringle. So, number of projects have been happening. They've completed pond dredging, which removed over 300 yards of material from the pond to restore it to a usable form. The Nature Center playground has been put in. AmeriCorps supported that project and did a fantastic job of building the playground as well as cleaning up some trails, established a new shortcut trail, and they're actually coming back asking to volunteer to do some more work at the park in collaboration with Pringle. They are working to update the trail map. Matt is taking care of that. They'd like to use an aerial map to include all the trails that are available within the park. Boundless Adventures is doing well. I had opportunity to attend their new exhibit, the axe throwing events, and throughout the first axe, I actually did put it in the target. It was a good start for the group and moving them forward. They are struggling with phone and internet service. They're working with the county to come up with a solution there and to move that forward. Like most of our parks, they're struggling with personnel. It is a voluntary basis at Pringle, and they're looking for naturalists. These are people that are trained in the naturalist arena to support them. Through COVID, as you can imagine, folks have diffused away into other things and filled the time that was available to them elsewhere. So they're re-engaging and bringing naturalists back, as they are also re-engaging with the schools, field trips, etc. It is at its core an educational experience with Pringle, and they're working hard on that. They have a membership drive plan to continue increasing and enhancing membership, and we'll work on that. This fall, they have Fun Fest. I hope everyone has an opportunity. The 3rd Saturday of September 17th, come out for Fun Fest. They also have concerts in the park on Thursday nights, and please do engage yourself in that. Once a month, they do invasive species removal. If you haven't pulled weeds, trees, etc., that don't belong, we have plenty of them in our county, and they need to be removed. It's every 4th Saturday. Check in at 9:00 a.m. and to be a part of that. I'm sure many of you read in the Kenosha News about the BioBlitz through Milwaukee and through the state. A number of folks came in and they assessed everything that's available in the park, every bug, every grass, every tree, flora, fauna, and through that assessment they discovered that our park actually has a fen. A fen is essentially a bog, but there's 2 different types of bog. One is acid, one is base. We have a fen. Don't ask me if it's base or acid. It's a fen. But that has opened up a new area of opportunity within the Nature Center and the park, and that is going to be capitalized on. And I'd like to make a comment. Pringle's approached the county to discuss development of a paved trail for the purpose of access for handicapped individuals. Essentially, they were told it's too expensive, we don't have the resources for it. And I'm paraphrasing the words, but that's what it comes down to. It's not free. It would cost roughly $125,000 to put in. However, it seems to me that we'd meet this with a very deserving project, provided this critical access for handicapped individuals, many of whom may include military and children, to allow them to enjoy the wonders of Pringle and Bristol Woods. I recognize that there's been an excessive focus and, might I say, bias toward million-dollar bike trails to nowhere and to the Pike River project, creating a new parklands in an area which already has significant access to parks and recreation. But I strongly encourage this board and the county executive to take the initiative to support Pringle Nature Center and its mission to provide educational experiences led by naturalists who volunteer their time to be there for all of our citizens. We have a plethora of bike trails throughout the county. It's time for a short trail for our handicapped outdoor enthusiasts to enjoy the outdoors as well. So they're asking for a paved surface. It's 1/8 of a mile, but it allows our handicapped and those who don't generally enjoy the outdoor spaces that we have to come out and enjoy them as well. So please keep that in mind as we come into budget season. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
Yep, just a couple dates to keep in mind going forward for the Racial Equity and Ethnicity Commission. They have a listening session August 10th at the Kenosha County Center at 6 o'clock, and then the following week on Tuesday, August 17th at 6 o'clock at the Job Center. And these are just strictly listening sessions. There's not a question and answer for this commission, so hope many of you can attend.
Thank you. Supervisor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nudo. I just have one quick announcement about a local community organization out in the Twin Lakes area named the Aquanauts. They put on water ski shows, and they celebrated 50 years this year as an anniversary as a local volunteer nonprofit. They put on many clinics over the summer for adaptive, for kids to get them out water skiing, and have gone on to produce many national state champions. They are back-to-back state champs, and 2021 and 2022 this year, and they celebrated it on Saturday, and we saw Executive Kirkman out there to give a proclamation for it as well. So it was very well attended, and a proud community local organization that's been around for a long time. So,
Thank you. Seeing no other lights on, supervisor reports are closed.
County executive appointments. Appointment 12, Chuck Walker to serve on the Camp Lake, Center Lake Public Inland Lake Rehabilitation District Board.
Refer to planning committee.
New business, Resolution 1 reading, Resolution 20 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Daniel Morehouse to the Kenosha County Traffic Safety Commission. Passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Nordigan excused.
Supervisor Stock.
I would like to move item 20.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Stock, second by Supervisor Belsky. Supervisor Stock.
Yes, this is an appointment for Mr. Morehouse to be on the Kenosha County Traffic and Safety Commission. He has been a police officer with Pleasant Prairie, a sheriff's deputy, as well as with Gurney. He also is a current crash investigator trained through Northwestern University. His appointment did pass unanimously in committee, and I would encourage everybody to vote for him this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Nay? Passes.
Resolution 21 from Public Works and Facilities Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Shelley Billingsley to serve as the Director of Public Works and Development Services. Passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Nordigan excused.
Supervisor Stock.
Move item 21.
Moved by Supervisor Stock, second by Supervisor Carroll. Supervisor Stock.
Yes, this was the second appointment that we had at our last Public Works Committee. This is the appointment of Shelley Billingsley as the Director of Public Works and Development Services. Mrs. Billingsley was previously at the City of Kenosha as an engineer, Director of Engineering, Deputy Director of Public Works, and since 2016 as the Director of Public Works. We all got to meet with her and talk with her about her experience, and are excited to have her over at the county. Her appointment was passed unanimously at our committee, and I would ask everybody to support it tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Rose.
Mr. Chairman, usually these resolutions contain a provision as to the starting salary of the individual. What would be the starting salary for her?
I believe Clara is here. Probably she can answer that.
Good evening. Her salary is $138,487.
Thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Rose?
No, thank you.
Supervisor, let's see, US.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Ms. Billingsley, I have a few questions, so if you could step up to the microphone. Okay, Ms. Billingsley, I'd like to talk about the velodrome and the work that was done, and then also about some of the issues that transpired shortly thereafter the installation of the new track. Could you elaborate on that?
The velodrome was installed by a contractor. We hired a firm to do the site inspection for that facility. We did have some concerns about the settlement of a pipe, so we did some sonar testing, and that's when we determined that there were some voids underneath the pavement due to the storm sewer installation project that was done, and we went back to the contractor and negotiated that through the council, and that was rectified.
Okay, and what did that cost the taxpayers of Kenosha?
I'd have to remember, I think we took an additional slab out because they didn't want to have a slab removal, a slab, so we negotiated a portion of it, 1 or 2 slabs. I'd have to go back and look at the notes roughly at the cost. I don't believe it was that much because we just made that decision to do additional work, but if it was strictly on what the voids that we saw, there wouldn't have been any additional costs.
But there was an additional cost, so what would that have been?
I'd have to go back to my notes.
How long have you been an engineer?
I've been an engineer since 2000, so I passed my PE.
Okay, and you cannot guesstimate as to what that
The velodrome was probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It was just a slab, so the costs have changed dramatically in the last 10 years, so maybe 10 grand, it just throwing a number out there.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then could you also talk about the Kenosha Playground project and about the floor and the base and
That wasn't also a negotiated. What had happened is the contractor, we had strong specifications in the type of flooring that was used. We asked for material data sheets to be submitted. Those were submitted. Those met our specifications. But what had happened is the contractor had flipped the product on us without notifying us and without our approval of the specifications for the floor. We found that out when we did the initial drop testing, which is how you go about certifying the flooring. So that floor was never certified, never accepted. We all found that through the investigation and testing of the floor after it was placed. Went through and found that they actually switched the product, which led us to not be able to accept the floor. I don't believe there are any additional costs in that one other than our attorneys going through the product specifications.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Belsky.
Thank you, Chairman Udo. Mrs. Billingsley holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and a Master's of Business Administration from UW Parkside. Recently, Mrs. Billingsley was elected Vice President of the Wisconsin chapter of the American Public Works Association. She lives in the town of Paris with her husband and children. Under her watch as the City of Kenosha Public Works Director, Kenosha recently received 2 Project of the Year awards from the APWA in recognition of the construction of the Kenosha Fire Station Number 1 on the site of the former Bain Elementary School and various stormwater improvements. Please join me this evening in voting for Mrs. Billingsley as the Public Works Director. She will oversee the Division of Facilities, Highways, Planning and Development, Parks, and Golf. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gans.
Thank you. Through the chair to Clara, you quoted what the salary is going to be. Where does that fall in the range of salary for that position?
This position is an E15. The top of that pay grade is 139,683, so it's just shy of top.
Wait a minute, what was the salary again? Tell me again, please.
Her salary, $138,487.
What's the starting salary for that?
$100,491.
Okay, first of all, in the executive's office, we get 3 people in there that already are bumped to the top. We get now this, where she's starting at the top. Is that how we're gonna hire people, is put them right at the top without working our way up the ladder of even starting them in the middle to entice? But I've not heard of all of a sudden just boom, putting people right at the top. Can you explain that to me, please?
Our policy allows for hiring up to midpoint with Human Resources Director approval. Beyond midpoint, it requires county executive approval. Salaries, especially for positions of this level, are often negotiated.
Is that the same for the ones in the executive office? Finance committee should be looking at this. This is amazing that this can be happening. I mean, we're so tight on everything else, and then we're just throwing money to the top end of people we bring in. I don't agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nadweski.
Through the chair to Ms. Tappa. How many people applied for this position?
I'm sorry, I don't have that with me. I believe it was approximately 16, 12 to 16. I do a lot of hiring, I'm sorry.
Okay. How many, was there like a finalist process?
Yes.
How many were finalists?
I believe there were 5 that were interviewed.
Okay, and what would you say in your expertise, or maybe according to the ongoing compensation study, is the competitive wage for this type of position in our geographic area?
Based on the hiring that we just did, I would say that we will be looking at this in our class and comp study. Again, we had to negotiate a rate to get a highly qualified candidate in this role to be competitive with other similar employers in our area.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Oh, sorry. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Clara, what did former Director Ray make? Do you remember off the top of your head? Let me ask a different question. He was here
Close to top, if not top.
Yeah, he was here for a long, long time, so you would assume,
Yes,
guess he
I'm
was making,
pretty
if
sure.
not the most, very close to it.
Yeah.
Okay. And through the chair, if I can have Ms. Billingsley come up again, I have a question for her. How long have you been Public Works Director for the City of Kenosha?
2016,
Okay,
6 years.
And how long, you answered earlier, forgive me, how long have you been an engineer?
I have been an engineer since 2000. I've been with the city since 2003.
Okay. And are you confident, this is a what-if question, if life had some major change and you and your family had to move across the country to XYZ state, are you confident you could get a position like this elsewhere?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not an engineer, but I know a little bit about what they require and what a director requires. I think you're qualified for this position. I think the salary is standard with this position. It's in line with the previous salary of the previous director. And I wouldn't be remiss if voting in favor of this. So I want to thank you for applying and thank you for your willingness to serve the people of Kenosha County as a whole, not just the city this time. I'll be voting in support of this. We have an incredibly qualified candidate here in front of us who's willing to work for the county. And I encourage my colleagues to vote for this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't quite hear, how long was Ms. Billingsley the Public Works Director at the city? I didn't hear that. Since when?
2016.
2016?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
for the past 6 years? Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing no other lights, we're going to go ahead and vote. Roll call is asked. Where are we missing? Supervisor Thomas.
Resolution passes 17 yes, 3 no.
Okay.
Resolution 22 from Legislative Committee and Supervisors Decker and Poole, a resolution to conduct a county-wide advisory referendum on making the state of Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Supervisors Poole, Thomas, Nedwesky, Stock, and Uhas voting aye. Supervisor Gashke voting nay. Supervisor Berg excused.
Supervisor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This was
Just
discussed.
move the resolution first, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I move to approve the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Thomas, second by Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Thomas.
Yes, this was discussed thoroughly at the committee meeting and was approved. I don't have any other comment other than to ask for your support in passing this.
Okay. Any comments? I see Supervisor Franco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting this resolution for several reasons that I'd like to briefly get into. First, whether we're talking about a Second Amendment sanctuary county or state, no one has the right to disobey just, legally enforceable law. For example, if the state or federal government passed gun reform measures, such as a red flag law, required a license for open carry, required universal background checks, or banned semi-automatic weapons or high-capacity magazines, would this give Kenosha County or Wisconsin residents in general the right to disobey these laws, since we are now a Second Amendment sanctuary county, or, if this referendum passes, a Second Amendment sanctuary state? Well, no, it wouldn't. Why? Because Second Amendment sanctuaries are purely symbolic and have no legal force in the first place. In fact, it's incorrect to believe that if Wisconsin is declared a sanctuary state, advocates could freely disobey any federal laws, present or future, that they feel infringe upon their Second Amendment rights. This idea totally runs counter to the Supremacy Clause in Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, and in fact, why Governor Evers vetoed Assembly Bill 293 last year. We are all required to uphold the rule of law, including the sheriff and his department, who are sworn to enforce them, though I know that was taken out. Putting this referendum to a vote does not change the fact that the residents of Kenosha County, or any county in the state of Wisconsin, are subject to state and federal law, whether we like it or not. If a law is deemed potentially unconstitutional, it's the venue of the courts to decide, not the citizens of Kenosha County. Second, what this resolution assumes is that the Second Amendment is absolute, and that in principle, any restriction on gun ownership is necessarily unconstitutional. This is patently false. In point of fact, no right is absolute, even the most fundamental right of freedom of speech. There are always circumstances where one's rights are constrained depending upon other factors. Also, the Heller decision itself was far from unanimous with a 5-4 majority decision, including a very narrow opinion read by conservative Justice Antonin Scalia, who recognized a right to own a handgun in one's home for the purpose of self-protection. Scalia did not go beyond that except to say, in his opinion, quote, that the Second Amendment is not unlimited, that we do not have a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever and for whatever purpose, end quote. Lastly, this resolution is really not one in any traditional sense. Normally, a resolution resolves to address a particular problem and then attempts to solve it. Unfortunately, what bothers me is that this is not what's happening here. In fact, there is no particular problem, except some vague notion that any possible state or federal restriction on gun ownership that may arise in the near future should immediately be rejected as unconstitutional. Well, my response is, how could one possibly know if a restriction is unconstitutional or not if one doesn't know what the restriction is? But this is the point. The authors don't specifically elaborate what restrictions they deem unconstitutional, because then they can avoid any legitimate debate by simply adhering to a position that all restrictions are unconstitutional by definition. This resolution, to me anyway, is nothing more than an ideological position wrapped up in the veneer of a resolution. Until the federal government or the Wisconsin state legislature actually passes a law that restricts gun ownership, what we have here is a solution looking for a problem. If that time ever comes, then I'm confident it will eventually end up in the courts where its constitutionality will be determined. This is how it should be, where the proper role of the judiciary resolves constitutional issues. In the meantime, if we support this resolution, we as a board are tacitly agreeing to the logic, reasoning, and assumptions presented in the language. But more importantly, I am concerned that we will be sending a false impression to voters that if a county or state disagrees with federal law, they can nullify it. The theory of state nullification of federal law is unconstitutional, has been for a long time. Federal law and the U.S. Supreme Court are the final judicial arbiters, not the states. Even as an advisory and ultimately symbolic referendum, I certainly don't want to send the message to my constituents that this board is formally endorsing this unconstitutional idea, which is implied in the language of the referendum question. This is why I will not be supporting this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Geschke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just start off by saying that as a general rule, I am in favor of referenda. And I personally think it's a good idea to listen to the voice of the people. I think it's a good idea to let their voices inform the decisions that we make. Let me invite you to, I do have a few questions though, so let me invite you to look at page 2 of the resolution before us tonight, and just really focus in on the proposed question that would potentially go on the ballot. The question is, should the Wisconsin State Legislature declare the state of Wisconsin to be a Second Amendment sanctuary state? If we are going to potentially put this proposed referenda on our ballot, and if we are going to potentially be asking the citizens of Kenosha County to vote yes or no on this proposal, then I think it's really important that we as a board and that our citizens that we represent fully understand what exactly it is that this referendum is asking. What is this asking? What exactly does this mean? Along those lines, I serve on the legislative committee, and at our last committee meeting, I tried to get clarification. I tried to get a better understanding of the meaning and the the potential effect of this proposed referendum. And truth be told, I received very mixed signals and very conflicting ideas from the two proposers of this resolution when I simply was asking for clarification on the committee level. So before we potentially put this referendum on the ballot, and before we ask our citizens to vote yes or no on this, I'm going to try again to get a little bit more clarification here. So through the chair to Supervisor Poole, a proposer of this resolution, my question for you, Supervisor Poole, is what exactly does Second Amendment sanctuary state mean? What do those words mean to you as a proposer of this, Second Amendment sanctuary state?
Supervisor Poole, do you want to answer that question, or you already answered
Yes.
in committee and you're fine with that?
Yes, I'll answer that.
Okay.
Under Assembly Bill 293, which was passed by the legislature last year but vetoed by the governor, it would become a Class A misdemeanor for any person to enforce a federal act, law, statute, rule, regulation, treaty, or order if it bans or restricts semi-auto firearms or magazines, requires registration of firearms or magazines or other firearm accessories, regulates the capacity of magazines, regulates the quantity of ammunition an individual may possess, or requires the confiscation of a firearm. And the bill also declares that firearms, firearm accessories, and ammunition that are owned or manufactured in this state will not be subject to federal law. So by passing this resolution, we're urging the legislature to pass this bill again, as Democrats are again trying to ban assault weapons and magazines. Just last Friday, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to approve H.R. 1808, which does just that. Barely a month after the Supreme Court's Bruin decision, Democrats are spearheading an assault on the freedoms and civil liberties of law-abiding Americans. With 24 million potentially banned firearms in common use, these draconian restrictions fall in blatant opposition to the Supreme Court's rulings the last few years. Their bill would criminalize the lawful and constitutionally protected conduct of millions of Americans. Democrats voted to violate our natural rights and our Constitution, choosing to promote policies that would imprison peaceable people who have done no wrong. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why we need to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. That was very clarifying. I appreciate that. All right, so that being said, with that information here before us, I'm not going to be able to vote for this tonight. Again, even though I generally am in favor of putting referenda on the ballot and asking the citizens for their opinion, this to me, the idea of a sanctuary, be it on guns or any other issue, the idea of a sanctuary community or state short circuits good government. I talked about this last time this came before us on the county level. We have separate branches of government, judicial, executive, legislative branch. We have law enforcement. And if we feel that something is unconstitutional, we have proper means to challenge that through the court system, not simply ignoring it. Therefore, I, in good conscience, cannot vote in favor of asking the citizens to short-circuit good government, and I will be voting against this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You ask yourself, when is it a good idea to put an issue to the general public for their opinion? The board has already spoken on this issue. We've already, in passing this resolution, urged our legislatures to carry out the intent of the Second Amendment sanctuary state issue. So what are we going to do by putting this to a referendum? This is a hot button issue. It's a divisive issue. It's one of those issues where we're going to get the general public very rare, up in arms against one another, argumentative with one another, and people angry with one another. It doesn't contribute to the peace and harmony of the community. I see it as one which divides the general public. There will be speeches on one side and speeches on another side, and what do we really accomplish here? Nothing. This is a representative form of government. This government has spoken on that issue. I think we ought to be contributing to the peace and harmony of the community, which for the last 2 years has been very divided since the riots of August of 2020. I don't want to see more issues brought before this government which divide our community even more, which put one person or one family against another on an issue that this board has already spoken on. And in the long run, I don't think that most of this resolution, if carried out, is going to mean very much legally anyway. So I would urge you to oppose this proposition this evening, as it does not contribute to the peace and harmony and good order of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more lights, so is there any other comments? I don't see none, so we're going to go ahead and vote. Roll call. Supervisor Rose?
Resolution 22 passes, 14 yes. 6 no. Okay. All right, Supervisor Rose's vote was to be no, so the resolution passes, 13 yes, 7 no.
Okay. Thank you.
Communications, 20, communication from Captain Horace Staples regarding the Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Program grant awarded to the Sheriff's Department.
Refer to Judiciary and Law and Finance Committee.
The approval of the July 19th, 2022 minutes by Supervisor Franco.
Supervisor Franco? Moved by Supervisor Franco, second by Supervisor Beshaw. Any comments? All those in favors? Oppose? Motion to adjourn by Supervisor Gersten, second by Supervisor Stoker. All in favor? We're adjourned.